content creation that drives B2B lead generation. Content has become the buying journey. If your content isn't generating leads, it's not a strategy, it's overhead. In B2B, prospects increasingly self-educate, compare options, and build internal consensus before they ever reply to outreach. When buyers can complete 50 to 90% of the journey before talking to sales, your content is effectively the first call for most of the deal cycle. That research is not a single blog post either. Many buyers consume 3 to 7 pieces of content before they engage a sales rep, and some research shows they review roughly 13 total pieces across vendor and third-party sources. The practical takeaway is simple. Your SDRs are usually walking into a conversation your content already started, either in your favor or your competitors. At SalesHive, we see this daily across outbound programs where cold email, cold calling services, and LinkedIn touchpoints intersect with content consumption. When we treat content as part of the revenue system, not just publishing, it becomes easier to earn replies, reduce friction on calls, and convert curiosity into qualified meetings. That's the standard we use. Content should change sales outcomes, not just generate page views. Why content now drives pipeline efficiency? Content is no longer optional because your market has already adopted it. Roughly 82% of B2B marketers actively use content marketing as a core inbound strategy, which means your prospects are being educated somewhere, often before your outsourced sales team ever gets a chance to speak. When content is absent or generic, you pay for that gap later in longer cycles, lower trust, and more price pressure. The economics are hard to ignore. Content marketing can generate about 3 times as many leads as traditional marketing while costing roughly 62% less. It's also consistently tied to volume. Companies that blog can see about 67% more leads per month than those that don't, provided the blog is tied to real offers and real distribution. Thought leadership is where content stops being a tactic and starts influencing late-stage pipeline. When 73% of decision makers say thought leadership is more trustworthy than traditional marketing, and 86% are more likely to invite vendors who publish it into RFPs, the impact is direct. You get pulled into better deals earlier with more authority. For any B2B sales agency or SDR agency trying to win premium opportunities, this is one of the most leverageable inputs. Build backward from your ICP and sales motion. The most common mistake we see is starting with a topic calendar and hoping revenue shows up later. Instead, start with your ICP and buying committee, then reverse engineer the content required to move each persona forward. If your ICP is broad, mid-market companies that want growth, your content will be broad too, and broad content rarely converts. A revenue-aligned content plan gets specific about pains, triggers, and risk. What is the moment that makes a buyer receptive? New leadership? An underperforming pipeline? A tool migration? An expansion into a new market? A failed quarter? When you translate those triggers into question-based topics, the exact questions prospects type into Google or ask peers, you stop writing for traffic and start writing for intent. Then map content to the stages your sales process actually needs to advance: problem awareness, solution evaluation, internal justification, and final selection. Don't overbuild. Most teams can start seeing movement with a tight set of 5 to 10 strong assets if those assets match real objections and real buying stages. This is also where SEO earns its keep. It helps your highest intent pages show up when prospects are actively searching for answers. Design assets SDRs can use in outbound. Content drives B2B lead generation fastest when it plugs directly into SDR workflows. Your SDR should have a small library of assets that match common outreach scenarios. a first-touch credibility piece, an objection handler, a proof asset, and a next step tool. When content is built without SDR use in mind, it turns into links that feel random, easy to ignore in a crowded inbox. A practical approach is to pair each major asset with a simple outbound playbook. 3 to 5 cold email templates and 2 to 3 call talk tracks that reference a specific insight and a specific next step. That's how content becomes a conversation opener rather than spam. Whether you run outbound in-house or through sales outsourcing, this standardizes quality across your cold callers and makes performance easier to improve. One high-leverage move is creating a single hero lead magnet tied to a real sales motion, like a benchmark report, playbook, or ROI calculator. Then building a dedicated landing page and routing responses into a tailored follow-up sequence. This fits naturally into a cold email agency workflow and also supports pay-per-appointment lead generation when the offer is strong. The goal is not more content. It's more content that creates a reason to talk. If your content can't be used by an SDR in a real conversation, it's not revenue content. It's just publishing. Create the right mix of high-intent formats. Not every format is equally valuable for lead quality. Top-of-funnel education builds awareness and search visibility. Mid-funnel assets create trust, and bottom-of-funnel tools convert. A steady blog is still a workhorse, especially when it's problem-driven, includes real frameworks, and points to a clear next step instead of ending with a vague, "Contact us." Mid and late funnel assets are where intent sharpens. Customer stories, implementation guides, ROI calculators, and tightly focused webinars tend to correlate with meetings because the prospect is investing time. They also reduce perceived risk for buying committees by showing outcomes, process, and proof, exactly what champions need to justify a decision internally. This is the kind of content we like to arm an outbound sales agency with because it turns outreach into help, not pressure. Gating should be selective, not universal. Keep early-stage education ungated so it can rank and spread. Then gate only the assets a serious buyer would happily pay for with their contact info, benchmarks, tools, templates, deep playbooks. The mistake is gating everything and starving your distribution, or gating nothing and losing the chance to capture high-intent leads at the exact moment they're leaning in. Distribution is the multiplier, and most teams underinvest. Publishing is not distribution, and this is where great content quietly dies. Your buyers live in feeds and inboxes, and you need repeatable channels that put content in front of them. Email nurtures, outbound sequences, partner co-marketing, and social posting that's designed for scanning. A strong content engine includes repurposing by default. One flagship piece should become a full kit of derivative assets across formats and channels. LinkedIn is the default distribution layer for B2B, and the numbers support the focus. About 95% of B2B marketers distribute content there, and roughly 80% of B2B social leads come from the platform. If you're investing in LinkedIn, but not connecting it to landing pages, offers, and SDR follow-up, you're paying for attention without capturing demand. Outbound is also distribution when you do it correctly. A cold calling agency or cold calling team can reference a timely insight, a relevant case study, or a benchmark angle to earn the next step, then follow up with the asset to keep momentum. The common failure mode is drive-by linking in cold email, sending a generic link with no context, which lowers trust and trains prospects to ignore you. Measurement. Proving content influence on pipeline. If you can't tie content to meetings and opportunities, you'll always be debating opinions instead of making decisions. The fix is instrumentation. Consistent UTM parameters, CRM campaign tracking, and a simple way to record primary content influence on opportunities. This creates visibility into which assets show up in the journeys of buyers who become pipeline, not just which posts got clicks. Use a small benchmark table to keep teams aligned on what good looks like across the funnel and where to optimize first. Once tracking is in place, optimization becomes straightforward. Double down on assets that correlate with meetings, refresh pieces that attract the wrong audience, and retire content that isn't used by sales. This is also where sales outsourcing providers can add unusual clarity. When you run the lists, the messaging, the calling, and the email, you see exactly which content opens doors and which gets ignored. Next steps: build a repeatable content-to-outbound machine. Start with a quick content-to-funnel audit. List your core personas and buying stages, then map every existing asset to that grid. The gaps you find are your roadmap, especially proof for IT security, internal ROI justification, and how it works explainers that make evaluation easier. This is the fastest way to stop guessing and start building assets that directly support conversion. Next, operationalize SDR usage so content is actually deployed in the field. Document a handful of email templates and call talk tracks that reference specific assets. Then train your reps or your outsourced SDR agency partner on when to use each one. If you need more authority in market, add at least one thought leadership asset per quarter based on founder or operator insight, because consistent POV content is one of the most reliable ways to earn trust early and influence RFP inclusion later. Finally, make repurposing the default and keep distribution intentional. Take one webinar, guide, or benchmark and slice it into a complete kit. SEO blog posts, LinkedIn posts, short clips, nurture emails, and SDR-ready snippets that fit a cold email agency or B2B cold calling services workflow. When you combine content with disciplined outbound execution, you don't just get attention, you get meetings, pipeline, and a system you can scale.